What's up, dudes? Welcome back to another episode of Rhomas Men's Team. Pretty simple. We are a group of guys helping each other make progress towards each other's goals. If you're new to the channel, awesome and welcome. If you want to help support the channel and join our pro team, head over to rhomasteam.com/pro, where you can contribute to us on a donation basis. We also give you access to exclusive content, mastermind groups, etc., etc. So anyway, hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll see you on the team. What's going on, brother?
Hi, Wes. Life is good. How are you?
Life is awesome, man. Just got back from New York City. As a lot of you know, I was at a meeting at a few days at the stock exchange, and man, just the importance of plugging into a beehive where everybody else is getting after it. You know, it's impossible to replicate. You know, again, as we always talk about, just getting on the right teams. You know, and as I was pulling out of the stock exchange and on the lift back to the hotel, this caravan of, I don't know, probably 12 black SUV Escalades pulls up to this, you know, this big restaurant and so on. And I don't know who was in there, but just like, man, I need to think even bigger than what I'm thinking now. Like, why can't I be that guy, you know? And in a good competitive way. You know, what America offers is just there's no ceiling. So I really do believe that the ceiling is just put in our heads. I really do believe that. Like, your action is limited by your mindset, and then it just takes a while to get the results. So anyway, coming back fully pumped up from New York City. How about you, buddy?
Yeah, well, I agree that the ceiling is in our mind. And Stuart, there are some kind of structural obstacles that we're born with, but I think the biggest obstacle is in our mind. Like, we are, most of us are blessed beyond measure in terms of the opportunities and comforts we have. And so for that, these days, most of us have to slay dragons on the inside, not dragons, you know, in faraway lands or whatever. So yeah, I think the obstacles are in our minds. And yeah, you know, I'm going through obstacles myself in terms of like going through a separation and divorce, and you know, and all the kind of like insecurity and unknowns that comes along with that. But you know, the scorecard and the daily habits therein really helps ground me in order for me to not let whatever obstacles there are kind of obtain. You know, like, not let them cripple me, not let them hold me back. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
How, if you don't mind me asking, how are you dealing with everything? Like, how are you feeling as you go through all this stuff? I'd imagine it's a freaking nightmare.
Yeah, it's a freaking nightmare. It's just like it is, you know, I have to practice living through uncertainty. You know, which is a kind of a grown-up skill that we need. I have to practice sitting with uncomfortable thoughts and not letting them kind of take over. How do I do that? Well, I mean, a Zen master will be able to sit, and that's it. And like, let the thoughts wash over him like the river washes over the rock. You know, I'm not there yet. I need to really activate tools. So, you know, for example, there was a kind of a cascading effect yesterday where the breaking point was this jerk in a big Ram truck who was trying to get into the hardware store parking lot. And I saw him kind of being rude to an old lady driver. And then when he got to me, he was rude to me too. And like, for some reason that activated me, you know, like, you know how these kind of like small interactions can either wash over us or they can really trigger us. So I had to like pull over and do a 10-minute meditation because of the compounding effect of whatever happened that day up to that point. And so, how I get through it is with tools. And this is a difficult season that I'm going through. But there are seasons, like winter becomes spring and spring becomes summer. And so I'm staying aware of that, as I go from kind of married man to single Viking attacking the women of Toronto like as if they were seaside villages.
Yeah.
How's that for an answer?
I love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah, I mean, I think the motto that I constantly say to myself is out offense or problems, and I'm going to double down on that. I think there's one concept of sitting in the pocket of your emotions, of just being, it's okay, right? It's okay to feel chaotic in a storm. When you're in the eye of the hurricane, it's very hard to maintain emotional equilibrium. I think that's one component. Then I also think there's a component of, okay, I know I could sit still, and I also know that I can take an enormous amount of action to make sure that I might not be able to reduce the size of these problems, but I can increase the size of myself or of my skill set, so that proportionally the problems represent a lower percentage of my overall life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and another way to say it is like, however things are bad, like God has endowed us with the ability to make them 100 times worse. Right? Like,
yep, 100%.
Yeah. Like if I engaged with the jerk in the truck, like, first of all, I don't speak Portuguese. Second of all, I don't speak it badly, the way like a retarded Portuguese guy would speak. And so, but if I try to engage with him, it might get physical. What do I gain from that? That's not the war I'm fighting, right? I'm not fighting the war to be the king of the hardware store parking lot. Like, God didn't bless me with the physical tools to do that. He blessed me with a brain. And so the war I'm fighting, or the battle I'm fighting is not to be the king of the hardware store parking lot. I'm engaged in a much bigger battle to like secure an awesome future for me, and an awesome present and future for me and my daughter and my family. And so, so I elected to let it slide and just kind of look at that episode as a test as to whether I would get distracted or not.
Yeah, Matt and I talked a long time ago about just repeating the mantra in your head of, this is not my game, or this is my game. So relentlessly focusing on the game or games that you want to play, and ruthlessly declining the invitations to the other games that you are not supposed to be playing. And if you take that, please.
You know it, and I know it, Wes. The hardware store parking lot is a zoo. Okay? Like, everyone who pulls up in their car, the bigger the truck, the more macho the game they play when they get into that hardware store parking lot. And I play like, I also play a role. I'm like, I'm the millionaire who's just kind of like cosplaying as like, fixing up my mansion or whatever kind of fantasy. I also do it. Like, the hardware store parking lot is a zoo. Okay. And so if you go to the zoo, you can either hurl feces back at the gorilla, who's doing that, or you can just be like, okay, this is a gorilla in his little pen. You know, he's playing with his bucket all day. That's his game, and I'm playing a different game.
Mark, let's throw it over to you, buddy.
Yeah, I think this. Hey, what's up, man? The simplest way I've heard it said is not my monkey, not my circus. I think that's like pretty short. But I don't know if this is what this is what you're describing, but I call it a spaz. And you know, defining what a spaz is after reflecting, I came up with it's when my emotional reaction does not match the circumstances. Because there's sometimes that, you know, you should feel pissed off about things, but in the parking lot of a Home Depot may not be that circumstance that requires that emotional reaction. I don't have the road rage bug, but I do have, I don't have it as strong as others. But mine is I can get depressed and just go down this weird fatalistic rabbit hole, and sometimes it's like, I mean, my most recent one was not getting, or I ordered chicken fajitas, and I got not chicken. It doesn't really matter what it was, and
you got the AR-15 ready.
The what?
You got the AR-15 semi-automatic assault rifle ready, and you're like, I'm going down to Chipotle right now.
No, like I said, mine isn't that. It was I'm so nice to these employees, and you know, and I try to be pleasant, and you know, I paid for something, and you know, I was getting like, I felt really uncomfortable speaking up, and then I went down this thing of like, why do these things happen to me? And it was just this weird depressive way, and that's how I react. And the emotional reaction didn't match, you know, that circumstance. It just, and it's easy for me to take that and turn it into, well, what's the point of going to the gym? What's the point of doing all these other things? And that's really insidious and dangerous for me, because yeah, everything's pointless if you see the world that way. And you know, yeah, so that's my definition of what I reflecting on it.
Well, Mark, I appreciate you saying that, because isn't it crazy how quickly we can turn this into like a tornado, a cascading of just completely ridiculous negative thoughts and emotions. You know, this 16-year-old messed up my chicken fajitas and put steak in there instead. Why should I even continue living? You know, it's crazy how the brain works. Like it just collapses, you know, a million steps into two. You know, this is why I can't go to the gym. I mean, it's so interesting how the brain works. Ray, what are your thoughts?
Mark, how does how does the road rage anger cascade for you? I'd like to hear that.
Hey dudes, sorry for the interruption here. Just wanted to let you know, if you want to join our pro team, go to romasteam.com/pro. You can help support the channel. You will also get access to exclusive content, masterminds, one-on-one sessions, etc. All right, back to the episode.
Well, for me, Mark, I definitely resonate with you, like with your experience where, like, I suppose some of us want to point the gun at the other person, and some of us want to point the gun on ourselves, right? And I am also one of those people where I point the gun on myself. Like, so, like, for example, if I don't get a job interview, if I have a job interview and I don't get the job, I can imagine myself not blaming them, but blaming myself, right? And a certain kind of person would blame them and their bias, or they don't know what they're missing. And a certain kind of person would blame themselves, like, oh, I'll never get anything, right? I'm the second kind of person as well. And so, but yeah, it's just as unhealthy. Maybe it's even worse, actually, because at least the person who is road raging against others distributes it over all the drivers on the road. Whereas every time something bad happens to you, the person who turns the gun on themselves, they're repeatedly, you know, striking themselves and like weakening themselves. So,
actually,
yeah,
I had a
go.
no. I had a actually, now that I think about it, so I think with the road rage one, or that anger feeling,
Fajita rage. Mm-hmm.
yes, those people deserve it. So I totally get it when you feel that way. What I think where I'm reflecting on is my mother was on the phone for 2 hours trying to deal with insurance and, you know, just the not telemarketer, but the call center situation. And she was getting more and more pissed off, and you could hear it, you know, and really giving it to the person on the other end. And, you know, and justified in certain ways, you know, getting transferred, all that. But then what was interesting is she hung up the phone, and then my dad made one little slip up, and it was like full on super, you know, full force on him. And then I just kind of watched it and was like, you know, he didn't really deserve that. And I maybe was a little too quick to point that out, because immediately her reaction was, "What? He didn't do anything." And to me, it's so obvious that she took all of that intensity and just put it on the other person. And that's what you really regret, I think, in those situations is, you know, the road rage at a guy at Home Depot, he'll be all right. He doesn't even think twice about his actions, probably. But the people around you that you unintentionally maybe react to are the ones that we probably regret the most. And
so Mark, what is the, what can you do if you find yourself, you know, lashing out at someone or taking it out on someone? What affirmative step can you take to make that better?
I personally
do in that situation.
Probably, you know, the first step is recognizing it, I think. And so hearing other people, I think when it's amplified in their situations, it helps you see the smaller, more difficult to see times you do it. So the other example I have, sharing this with one of my buddies, you know, he's got a significant other, and so he's I gotta give you some certain details, but he's in the kitchen. She's taking a nap on the couch, but not really sleeping. I'm just kind of chilling, and he eats a plum, which, you know, I think that's one of the more quiet fruits, you might say. But he says she you know, tussles around, and he can tell that he's disturbing her rest, and he has this freak out. Now, after sharing the call center or the call thing of my mom with him, he realized that he was watching sovereign citizen interaction videos on YouTube, and he immediately jumped to, I can't eat a fucking plum in my own kitchen, like, and just felt so entitled to this, you know, situation. And I'm like, awesome, bro. I'm glad you're able to reflect on why you had that kind of reaction. And I think a lot of it too is when we're primed for these reactions, and we're oblivious to it. You know, if you're watching that kind of content, you're going to see the world through that lens potentially. I don't know. I don't have any other really good skills. It's just, like I said, catching them, seeing a more amplified version of it allows you to see the blind spot you have whenever you might have that reaction in a similar way.
Yeah, and there's like there's a mental model that comes to mind, which is awareness, acceptance, action. Right? Awareness would be, okay, I wigged out when I went with the plum, juicy plum. acceptance would be like, it's okay if I did that because I was primed by watching all the videos. Action would be making an amends and like owning your behavior and just being like, hey, I'm sorry, like taking ownership of your part. Like in that case, it sounded like two people freaked out at each other. And so your friend can make an amends by apologizing for his role in the argument. And that is, yeah. And Wes, we were talking about this last week, right? Where there was a kind of mental model of 4 words. Do you remember which one it was?
I don't. Give me more context.
It wasn't halt, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, but it was something like that.
I'd be able to find it.
Yeah, and Ray,
Yeah,
I'm not sure. For some reason, your mic sounds a little muffled, and that's not a super distraction, but I'm not sure if that can be fixed at all. And no sweat if not.
There might be some ambient noise.
Yeah, I think
affecting it.
So. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but it's one of those. Cool, let's do it.
Imagine, think, plan, act, reflect.
Yep.
Par.
Yep.
And so, yeah, so like AAA, which is awareness, acceptance, action, is a good mental model to keep in your back pocket. Another one is ITPAR, imagine, think, plan, act, reflect. And another one is HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And so these are different mental models that you can use. Like if you were just kind of like attacked in some kind of whatever, and you want to attack back, or you want to be do a preemptive strike, it might be healthy to just do a quick analysis before you proceed, right? Wes, you want to remind us about ITPAR?
Yeah, it's a really good point. So ITPAR is the model that we use for goal planning. So the first step is imagine, think, plan, act, reflect. So step number 1, imagine. Number 2, think. Number 3, plan. Number 4, act. And number 5, reflect. You could only imagine, right, what this would look like in any of those stages. You would not write down, get distracted by the guy at Home Depot, right? That just doesn't fit in the plan. But how often do we let our limbic system, our nervous system, take over when we have these even tiny obstacles in the way? I mean, just watch yourself, like record your thoughts in any 10-minute period. And I put money down that you're not distracted at least 57 times, by stuff that's completely irrelevant, not on your goals document. And by the way, I'm no different. It's really interesting. So I think there's a couple ways of really dissecting this. Number 1, you could record your time. I just went through an executive coaching session recently, and they did the classic, okay, record your time in 15-minute increments, and then let's analyze the results. That's one way of doing it. And you will start to see that even when you're being timed and it's an exercise of concentration on the thing that you're trying to fix, even when that happens, the amount of distraction that your brain inevitably absorbs is just unbelievable. That's one way of doing it. You could also reverse it. Start to say, okay, I'm going to take the next hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. I'm going to work specifically on this particular goal, and stack the points for each little micro milestone that you hit, right? Okay, I'm going to send an email out to this client, or I'm going to write the next paragraph of the book that I've been wanting to work on for the last decade, whatever it is. You will inevitably see that there's a lot of empty space in your movement or your activity. It's unbelievable. I mean, Ray, I don't know what you would think. I would imagine 80 to 90, if not 95% of our day, if we're just left to our own biology and its whims, is probably just dead space that doesn't move the needle. Ray, what do you think?
Gosh, I was going to say 50% Wes, but that is heartbreakingly accurate, like 95%. Yeah. Like the plane is in the air only 5% of the time. Like the other 95 is either like runway, taking off or landing, or just idling, for sure.
Yeah, which is really interesting. So I think I actually prefer the other way, to count the wins, because if you start doing like this, it's no different than in finance. If you have somebody who, let's just say, is, making $100,000 a year or $50,000 a year, whatever, let's say $50,000 a year, and then they have all their expenses, and at the end of the day, they are able to save $10,000. Let's say that's the number, or let's even make it worse. Let's say they can only save $5,000 at the end of the year. When I then go and tell them, it's like, hey, go get a side gig or try a side business. If they then make $5,000 for the entire year from that side business, selling lemonade or whatever it is, to some people that might be like, oh, well, that's a failed business because it took you a whole year to make $5,000. I would say that's not true. It's the exact opposite. You just increased your bottom line income by 100%. Right. So if you made $50,000 and then you're only able to save 5,000 of it, let's just say, after living expenses, et cetera, and then you're able to make $5,000 extra on the back end from your lemonade stand, you've just increased your after expenses, right, like net income, by 100%. And that's an enormous needle mover. I mean, think about what that would do. Well, it's no different than in action. If we were to look at the amount of space that we have in a day and how much we actually get done, let's say you get done 3 big things a day. Well, instead, if you focused and said, okay, I'm going to try to get done another 3 things, which I guarantee you could get done in a fraction of the time that you typically do. Well, you've now just increased your output by 100%. Does that make sense? Right. I know this is kind of like an abstract
100.
topic, but man, it's been a big deal for me when I'm on my A game. Yeah, Mark, please.
So yeah, I have a question about this. So it's related to goal setting. Sometimes for me, I find it's easier to set these really ambitious goals, and to be honest, 95% of the goals I set, I do not meet them if I'm being objective. And if I'm more geared towards a depressive, pessimistic attitude, I can easily say, well, I'm a failure. Look at the evidence. I can't do any of these things. And for me, I've been working on lowering the bar so that I have a lot more wins. And that's a dangerous game because, you can just keep patting yourself on the back, but it is a matter of, any increase, like you're saying, is a significant increase compared to what you were doing.
Yep.
And so my question is on that. And if I put it into the model or the idea I've come up with, okay, so discipline. And I don't know the derivative of the word exactly, but I made up my own ideas of this. So I came up with discipline. I ain't going to do this thing. And I seem to be really good at that. Dieting, quitting alcohol, all these things, but I'm not good at discipline, turning on the parts of my brain that the procrastination and doing the things that I know I need to do. And that is actually a much harder challenge for me than cutting out things. And from my experience so far, cutting out things like quitting alcohol did not solve all my problems. And you can look at it and be like, well, what's the point? But at the end, it's still an achieved goal. But I'm finding that the discipline has been a lot more difficult for me. And so maybe the goal bar and your perspective on this.
I 100% can relate to that one, Wes. First of all, Mark, give yourself a break. Guys like you and me, drugs and alcohol will kill us, right? So it's like, boo-hoo. Like, I quit drugs and alcohol, and all I get is another 60 years to be on this planet and win, or experience life and try. That is not something to complain about, right? Like you get 60 more years to be in the arena. Okay, so let's start there. Second of all, I don't have any help for you, man, because I struggle with exactly the same situation. Something I find works is the scorecard, right? Which, as you know, is waking up and analyzing or actioning sleep, weight, water, active love, goal review, learning, journaling, movement, meditation, plus a few others like prayer and playing music that are personal to me. Those are stacking wins. Like you said, they're small wins that so you can say, oh, so what? It's like even a ham sandwich could do half of those things. It is stacking wins. It is putting you in the winner's mindset, right? And it is kind of neutering or defusing that bomb, which says, I can't do anything. I'm no good. Staying connected is another thing I found. Like, so that active love, that sending a text to someone who needs it or deserves it. I have also found that placing a phone call first thing in the morning, like, or as soon as possible. So like, anyway, stacking wins as soon as, like, the earlier I do it in the day, the better the results that obtain. And the same is true for calling someone in the program. Now, like, so for me, it's my sponsor in AA, or it's just another one of my brothers. That kind of sets my internal clock, or just like puts to sleep any of those, a lot of those thoughts that I can't, right? And so those are two recommendations or kind of reflections for me. Pick up the phone to get you pumped up for the day. And also the scorecard is stacking small wins, like you said. Wes, thoughts?
Yeah, I've got a few on this topic. Number one, and this is my personal prescription, Mark, so if it benefits you, great. If not, then, try something else. Number one, it's non-negotiable for me for the imagine part of the ITPAR. So imagine, think, plan, act, reflect. If we are not nested in a much larger future, right? And I mean, think 10x of where you think your boundaries would be. In my opinion, we've been gifted the ability to imagine that future that is significantly better. And as we've said here before, if you're not making that North Star goal so big that other people aren't laughing at it if you were to tell them, then it's not big enough. And I can now confidently say that it works. And if you were my brother, that's what I tell you, like, just trust it. Now, it takes a lot longer than most people think, including myself. But I could tell you it works. So I think if the goal is not super compelling, then it's like, no shit, you're not motivated to reach it. Like what's the point of, okay, I want to shed 3 pounds, right? Versus I want a 6-pack, right? Whatever that is, or I want to make an extra $100 versus I want to make $1 million. Now I think to bridge the gap, right? Because the risk that you take there is that it's so lofty. If you're not measuring the milestones in between, it's like, well, yeah, I had that goal and I've told all these people for the last decade and I'm not there. It's like, yeah, because you said you want to become a billionaire, right? So you had a false expectation of it's only going to take a handful of years. So I think really being generous to yourself, as if your best friend or your brother were counting your wins for you. Now, I'm not saying to be delusional, but I think you should be generous with yourself. Hey, if you did something that gives you one more point in the bucket towards whatever it is for you, right? Saving the next dollar, which, by the way, I have something in my head called the Zero Club. It's like for every 1,000 or 100 or whatever the next zero I'm trying to get to on the balance sheet or my savings account, etc., I celebrate that win. And by the way, sometimes it'll be like $10, right? Like
paying off a parking ticket or whatever it is.
Exactly, right? And honestly, like literally counting those wins. I take pictures of mine as well. So that way it's just super easy for me to scroll through my phone and, like, if I'm having a rough day or whatever, just like go through your wins album. Then here's the other thing. And this is one of those things where all of these recommendations, I would want to see a list, right? It's like, okay, show me. Don't just say that you do it, right? Show me. Could you bring up your wins list? Could you bring up the X, Y, and Z? The other thing is, are you making it about others? Because I think built into our biology is just this incredible feedback mechanism. Go and open the door for somebody. Go and open the door for 10 people. And you'll get a dopamine rush probably from 8 of those people. 2 of them are going to be knuckleheads and not acknowledge you for opening the door. But do something in the spirit of creating value for others. And it's crazy how addicting that is. Now, I think scaling up in your career is more about that. How big of a problem can I solve for another human being? And how good can I get? How great can I get at that? And man, when you do that, the bigger and bigger problems that you're able to solve for other people, right, the rest takes care of itself. So I think that other part of this is really like integrating the value to others, because everything that we talk about here, ITPAR, goal setting, vision boarding, and so on, it must intersect. The origin must be of how do you create more value for others and for yourself. And that's it. And then it's just go play the game. Don't get distracted by other gold shiny objects. You know what I mean? Mark, what's your perspective?
So I make a little list of the one-word scorecard.
Love it.
And I just carry that in my wallet, and I'll make little notes here. But I think what I need to kind of do is, it's not enough to just carry it and check it off, but maybe even put a rating. And go back to the spreadsheet. I know you love the Excel, but this is kind of my way of doing it.
I love it, dude.
But I see reflecting the love one. Seems to be at the end of the day that I might not get to it. So putting that first, I see being important. And then with that same concept, I've been doing journaling, but I recently moved my journal to the beginning of the day. And it's a little bit of a different type of journal, because for me, I thought journal was just a chronology of everything I did through the day. And getting some good journal questions to prompt you. The first one in my morning one is, what am I grateful for? Kind of does prime my brain to think in that way. And then the last journal question at the beginning of the day I have is, what am I doing that's working? And what can I do to make it better? And, that's a good parallel of, this is what's working, so it's not all terrible. This part is working. And when you see that and recognize that, it's a lot easier to say what you can do to make that a little bit better. And that to me is how I kind of get some continuity from one day to the next. And not just because I don't know about you guys, but it's work and things like that can be very chaotic and distracting. And you can just take somebody else's problem and try to, make progress on it. But reflecting on the things that are working for you and just having that fresh and having that idea of what you're going to do to make it a little bit better really has helped me. But so journaling in the morning seems to be part of that. So putting love up in there. It's not enough to just be grateful. Probably should, take some action. And that'll probably set me on a different trajectory for the day.
Yeah. I think you're spot on, man. I think what you're referring to, I think of as framing. What's the frame that you're going through? I forget what sports team it was. It's probably most sports teams, but as they walk out onto the court, right, there's like a saying right above the door frame. That's how I envision framing. How are we going into the world each and every day? When we walk through that frame, is it a gratitude frame? Is it an everybody's out to get me frame? Is it a frame of like, oh, well, I'm going to see that guy at Home Depot again frame? Like, what's the frame? And that, in my opinion, will dictate how the day is going to go for you most likely. Ray, what's your perspective?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what those messages are. Like I can, right? Like I can imagine the Yankees every time they run out onto the field, they pass some kind of message, right? That pumps them up and like encourages them to perform at a level that the greats from the past did, right? To access that DNA, right? And yeah, hungry, angry, lonely, tired doesn't really do it for me. And I think that's more like those ones are like when we're in conflict or something, right? Just to do a kind of a quick check to determine whether we're acting or whether we're responding, but reacting or responding. I love the framing that you guys are talking about. Go ahead, Mark.
So one of the things I noticed about myself, and I think Wes has talked about it, where Michael Jordan would create an idea in his head of the opposing player talking shit, and he wouldn't spend any time trying to investigate whether it was true or not. He just played as if it was reality. Yep. And I've noticed that about myself with test taking. If I view the test that I have to take, if I have an adversarial attitude towards the test maker, and really give the guy a name, like Jeff is trying to trick me, and I'm not gonna fall for it. Like, and it's a silly thing that I'm telling myself, but I do way better just kind of giving myself that thing, because otherwise it's just an abstract, scantron. But if you're actually thinking like there's somebody on the other end of this that wants me to fail, it gives you another form of motivation that really seems to work. Yeah.
Oh, Wes, do you have any tools like that you use?
Okay. Yeah. So, Mark, I'm not sure how long you've been listening to the cast, but I have an enemies list. I put it, I engraved it on a piece of metal in my wallet. And that helps me. But yes, all of this stuff is framing. Mark, to your point, Michael Jordan, I think one of his best frames was he wanted to perform at the top of his game every single game. And what he told himself was there is at least one kid in the stands who his parents paid a lot of money for them, right, to see Michael Jordan play live, and that's probably the only time they're ever going to see him. So there's no excuse to just mail it in, right, to just coast. So that is a frame that I very, very much can appreciate. Yeah, and just seeing in the comments, RA's comment of my ex-wife's new boyfriend, LOL, on his enemies list. I'm sure
he's on the list. Yeah. And then Matt McCusker, second Mike Emeritus on this podcast. He used to have a term for the committee in our head. That kind of trash talk, that head trash that we tell ourselves, it's not going to work or whatever. He used to call that, remember this, Wes? He used to call it his roommate, Paul.
Yep.
Where he's like, I'm not going to take advice from my roommate, Paul. Another one is like, Wes, the kind of, the guru of the warehouse who like clearly is not living and like, kind of life of self-reflection and excellence, but it's just a know-it-all and never stops talking about what everyone should be doing, or right.
Yep.
That's another, same hardware store. I heard a guy, I saw a guy, of course he was sitting down and just kind of telling everybody what's wrong with either, quantum physics or, the state of the economy or whatever he was yammering on about. Really, like, I wondered, it was so bad. I was wondered, like, I hope to God I don't ever, like, I'm not that guy. Do you know what I mean?
I noticed that there's like, there's just little things too, that, one of the things I noticed, so before I got sober, the music I listened to was a lot of emo, depressed, kind of like you can even put country, some of the country songs in that category. And after getting sober, I realized I really enjoy rap. And one of the things that I noticed was very few rappers talk about being drunk because you can't get caught slipping. There's ops out there, and you know, you got to make your money and just hustle. And you know, it's helpful to me to you know, even that I noticed that change makes a big difference in
I love it.
how you're approaching things.
Yeah, right on. Well, Mark, there's no doubt in my mind that you are on the path of progress. You are correct that you have not reached the end of the path of progress with just the health metric. For you, that's quitting drugging and drinking. For me, that's quitting drugging and drinking. We are on the path of progress for the rest of our lives. So, yes, you are required to get out of your comfort zone continuously for the next 60 years. So am I. And I don't like it any more than you do, man. But that is where the payoff is. Correct, Wes?
Yep. Hell yeah. On that, final words of wisdom, Ray.
I think it was Will Smith that said, and I've said it over and over again. I learned it from you, and I just repeat it over again. The best feeling in the world is right on the other side of the worst feeling in the world.
Yep. Hell yeah. Love it. Mark, passing you the mic, buddy. Final words of wisdom.
No, thank you guys. And, you know, I just really can see that it's good seeing the opposites because in my own little tunnel vision, you know, I can't think of a person that's more opposite to me than, you know, Wes in a lot of ways. But you drop these knowledge bombs that really make me think, and I wouldn't think that way. So, yeah, I appreciate you guys.
Hey, thank you, brother. And my final words, and Mark, to give you credit as well. You're making me think again, okay, what frames am I going into each day with? And I'm going to look through my mental models list to make sure I'm like going in, you know, selecting the right frames, because that is such a profound needle mover for me. And I'm sure for every guy, if we go into, okay, are we going into today with the best possible frame of a mindset? So anyway, I love you, dudes. Thank you guys very much.
Yeah,
I will see you all on Monday. Later.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. We're not helping you, man. You're helping us, all right?
Oh, that's why I'm here, man, to help myself. Thank you.